This is Second Cutting, a story about land, people, animals, and how they all work together. My name is Amelia Cronan. I'm here in Laurelville, Louisiana with Dr. Shannon Gonsoulin. So, what's the biggest mistake that ranchers make going into the winter?
I think one of the biggest mistakes that we have made, and unfortunately a lot of us do every once in a while, is not have the right expectations. Don't look ahead and plan for something that is going to come. We need hay. How much we need? Well, we probably need this much, and you run out. Doggone it. It's yes, we need ryegrass. How much we plant? We plant this much. We overplant. Doggone it, we don't graze it. So I think a lot of things that we do as ranchers is to decrease the amount of things you run into is to always keep in mind that what you decide today will affect you in 3 or 4 months. So you always got to look ahead, you know. So we're looking at planting ryegrass now. Well, the ryegrass won't be grazed till December or January, but we still have to know what pastures we're going to plant. We got to know what pastures we're going to go ahead and clip the hay out of, which that was decided in August. So you always got to kind of be ahead of the game and always know that Mother Nature can always throw a stick in your spokes and make that different. So I think a lot of times we forget about looking so far ahead that we try to do us in the now and fix something now and do something now. We got to plan for this thing in the future. So I think that's probably our biggest. And I think it may be farmers in general. Everybody has a season to do things and they got a protocol they do. And sometimes you forget or it slips your mind to do something in advance.
How do cattle's nutritional needs shift from summer to winter?
Their needs stay the same. It's the nutrition of the grass that changes, right? So they need so many calories per day. They normally eat so much grass per day. And it depends on if the grass is really good quality, they'll eat less because they're getting more from it. When we put them on hay, hay is a filler for the most part. The better qualities of hay, alfalfa and peanut hay that are very high quality. We don't grow down here very much. Our weather just doesn't allow that to grow. So most of the hay we have down here is going to be our summer pastures that have been fertilized to increase some of their content of the protein side to where they have better quality hay. But hay is just a filler. So you want to have the cattle in really good shape before you feed them hay because the hay is just going to maintain them. If they have calves on their side, that's more of a draw. So they're going to require better quality hay. We try not to have calves during the wintertime. That way the mamas come in at a certain level and we maintain them on hay and then we hit the ryegrass and then we calve when those animals have access to much better food source.
How do young calves handle the first cold snap?
They do pretty good, from a cold snap standpoint. We don't, we rarely get really cold weather down here. I say that. And last year we had a record snow of 15 inches. If calves are dry, they can handle the cold pretty good. If they're born, of course, they're wet when they're born and are born in a really cold atmosphere, a freezing type of rain or a freezing atmosphere and they're cold, they can have some problems. And we sometimes lose a few from that. But we don't normally have a lot of big cold weather, so we have to worry about that. And we try to calve a little bit later in the spring where we kind of get out of those freezing temperatures to decrease the chance of calves having problems.
Are there behavioral changes in the herd when the weather cools off?
You see them not hiding in the trees a whole lot because our summers are pretty hot. Heat stress is a big thing that we deal with down here. Summertime with a 110 heat index, they're hovering under trees for the majority of the day. They'll go out and graze early in the morning and late in the afternoon. When it starts to cool off, you start to see them grazing later in the morning and earlier in the afternoon because the heat index is not hot enough for them. So they'll go out and graze. You see those shifts. But other than that, that's pretty much about it.
When you think about regenerative ranching, what's the simplest practice that makes the biggest impact?
I think on a from our standpoint, a grass-fed diet is pretty regenerative. That is the definition, right? The grass is always there. It keeps coming back. As long as you maintain it and take care of it, it will be a source for you for a long time. So you graze it, it comes back. It regenerates. You clip it, it comes back. It regenerates. The frost kills it, it comes back next spring. It regenerates. So I think being able to feed out animals a pasture-based diet continually is a big part of the regenerative part of our ranch.
What's a local tradition or habit that you think defines ranch life in South Louisiana?
What is the
A local tradition.
I don't think, I guess you always dictate a ranch with beef. That's kind of what everybody thinks about. But back earlier, and I say earlier, even 30 years ago, boucheries were big, right? And that's a hog. That's not a calf. My grandparents would always do boucheries, and I'm sure a lot of people have the same stories with their grandparents from down here in South Louisiana, to where boucheries are a big part of a big Sunday deal. The families would get together to slaughter a hog, and everybody took a portion home, but everybody helped in the process. That's a heritage that we've been having out here since the Acadians came, late 1700s. On the cattle side, they don't normally do that very much, but that's a big tradition that we do have down here. And it still goes on, limited, unfortunately. You don't see it happen as much as it used to with the passing of my grandparents, which were born in the early 1900s. They grew up in a time to where that was done very, very frequently. And so they did it with their kids, but their kids didn't. So my parents didn't do a boucherie. My grandparents did. So you're starting to lose that part of our culture because it just hasn't been done along. Now, there's some locations and some families who still do it. The Ville Platte area, Eunice area, still big with doing those things. St. Martinville, still pretty big with doing at the Boucherie Festival every year. So they still have them, but they're much more scarce, I'm afraid.
If you could make every rancher about one small change tomorrow, what would it be?
Direct market your product. I think as a veterinarian and coming from vet school and being taught from a veterinarian standpoint, it is still the feedlots huge. That when we got out of vet school, if you did production medicine, it was mainly associated with feedlots, the way that ag has been done over the last almost 100 years. When we got to the grass-fed side and started looking at that direction, it did change my mind from a standpoint of we could do something different and maybe a little bit better. And that's what we targeted to do.
How much of good ranching is science and how much is intuition?
There's a lot of ranchers who aren't veterinarians that have a lot more experience than I do, that have a lot more information than the books can sometimes show. So 50-50 at best, maybe lean a lot more towards intuition and history, from a standpoint of are there things that we have learned can do better, better antibiotics, better ways of treating animals, better vaccines? Sure. Yes. But if you could talk to a cattleman probably from the 1950s, 1940s of what they could do back then with almost nothing, it would surprise you. And I think that has a lot of merit when you talk to some of these older guys that tells you how they used to treat things or do things without the tools and some of the skills that you teach in vet school. It's like, wow, you did that with a rope. It's like, wow. I think we have a lot of things to learn from older generations that we take for granted, thinking we might know more than they do just because they do it a little bit differently than we do it. That's not always the case.